Hello there. I want to talk to you about what to look for and what to avoid in an inexpensive knife. Now, this is not a comprehensive thing. This is just something that I generally look for in a knife before to judge whether or not, I want to even think about purchasing it. I understand I'm talking about inexpensive knives. A lot of this will apply regardless of the cost of a knife, but I'm talking about inexpensive knives because this channel is geared toward beginner sharpeners or beginner knife users and owners, or to people that, do not have a big income and where they can spend like $60 and up on a knife. Their limit might be 35 or 40 bucks at the upper limit. And so I'm trying to present knives that are decent quality for that range that would serve people. Also, this is not about someone who would use a knife roughly, heavily, or extensively. If you have a job or a hobby that requires the use of a knife in a hard situation, you need to spend some money on a good knife with really nice steel. Okay, that aside, I want to look at a knife that failed me versus knives that didn't, that are inexpensive. Now, this knife is a Rite Edge, R-I-T-E edge. Now, I don't know if the current Rite Edge knives are made as well as this because I don't own any. I bought this at least 20 years ago at a gas station. I purchased it because I wanted a knife that I could use roughly and not have to worry about whether it broke or anything like that because it was inexpensive. A beater, a knockaround knife, okay. And this is a Stockman pattern. It has 3 blades. And this is probably my favorite pattern in pocket knives. Traditional pocket knives, and I prefer traditional knives. The modern folders and tactical stuff are nice. I have some of them, but I don't generally carry them in my pocket. There's a couple that I do, but most of the time I don't. I prefer these. But this Rite Edge, I've had this knife 20 years. And it might not have the greatest steel, but it's well made. And it served me well for a very, very long time. And I don't see any reason why this knife wouldn't last another 15 or 20 years. Okay? It's been through numerous sharpenings. It just, I lost the shield like a month after I got it because they're glued in and I can't find it. Couldn't find it, so I couldn't glue it back in, that kind of deal. But this is a decent knife for the price. Okay. This is the Old Timer by Schrade. These are really good quality knives for the price that you will pay for them. In the price range of these knives, there is not another brand that I'm aware of that is as good as these knives are. And these are all Chinese-made knives. We're not winning any popularity contests for, beautiful knives and expensive knives and all that stuff. I don't care one rat's hind end what people think about my choice in knives or this channel as far as other knife enthusiasts and stuff like that go. This channel is for beginners and beginner stuff. And if you have been in the knife business or the knife hobby long enough to prefer expensive blades and stuff like that, this ain't the channel for you. You're welcome. but that's not what this is for. But anyway, this blade is also made by Schrade, or imported as a Schrade. But this is, and the reason I say that is Schrade used to be an old timer, and Uncle Henry, they used to be an American company, and the knives were much far superior steel wise than what you get in the current crop of Schrade. Okay, and I have an older Schrade, and it blows these knives out of the water. You will also have to excuse the audio quality in this video. My camera mic just died on me, so, or my exterior mic, so you're getting what the camera will give you. But anyway, this is a Schrade Imperial, and you see I have tried to take this knife apart. These knives are made, there's a pin that pins these blades in, and then they buff that so that you can't hardly find that pin if you look for it, but they're all pinned knives. This knife, I've tried to take this pin out so that I can get these blades out and make a tool out of that, because this knife failed me after like 2 weeks, maybe 2 weeks. It might have been the first week, but it died really fast. And in my opinion, and let me set these aside and look at just this knife. Don't buy Schrade Imperial. No matter how good it looks to you, and no matter how attractive the price, the Old Timer brand is going to be just a tiny little bit more expensive, but not enough to matter, and it's much better quality, and I'll show you why here in a minute. But this knife failed on me. You see, that blade works really well, right? Okay, well this blade, is broken. Why? Well, the way these blades are made, this back strap here, these are springs, and this particular pattern is I believe a trapper. Yeah, 2 blades, one spay and one clip. This is a trapper design. There's a bunch of different patterns of the traditional knives, and I might get into some of that in a later video. But so it has 2 blades. It has a clip point blade, like that, and then it has a secondary blade known as a spay blade, and they each run on a separate spring. Okay, and you have a liner in the middle between them. And when you look at the blades themselves, when you look at the knife, once the blades are open, you see it has a divider in the center. Okay, this knife failed me big time. Let's look at why. Well, let's look at my right edge, and it's the same will hold true for the Old Timer. When you look at the back strap of this knife, you take a really close look at it. That's one solid piece of steel, and so is that. Okay, with a liner in the center. But when you look at this knife, okay, the one that broke, I don't know if I can get in there or not. Here. The one that broke the back strap snapped in half. Why? Because the back strap was in two pieces. If you look at this one, that still works. Okay? And you look really close. You can see that's not one piece. It's not. It's made in two pieces, and they've either glued it or soldered it or something together. Now, the only reason I can think of for them to do that, because it wouldn't cost any more to make a solid back strap. The only reason I can think of that they might do that is not as a cost-cutting measure, but as an assembly measure. In other words, it would be faster to assemble the knife somehow, and so they could produce more for less money. Okay, because they're speeding up production. They've cut. That's a huge corner to cut. Okay. It really, really is. And I would probably assume that every one of these Imperial knives are probably made in the same exact way. And that is a crap design. It's a highly inferior. And these knives will fail faster than one that has a solid backstrap. Now, you look at this knife. And you look at this knife, this right edge, they probably cost the same, or maybe this might be a couple of dollars more because I bought it 20 years ago, and I don't know how long right edge has been in business in this country. They may have just started, for all I know. But they were similar in price, enough that it doesn't matter. Same with this. This and that are similar. You know, this knife probably cost $10 if I'm not mistaken, $9 and something. And this thing probably cost 12 or 15. Well, I can tell you that's about half the price of it, half again the price of this, but it's well worth the extra few dollars. When we're talking in the range of between 10 and $40, okay? Well worth spending $5 extra for this over this, or a couple of dollars for this over that. Just really is. Now, when we look at the rest of this knife, it's not bad. It's put together well. I don't see any gaps in the cover or the scale. Cover's an old timer acronym for what these are, or anything like that. When you are looking at buying a cheaper, a lower end, or even an expensive brand of traditional folder, let's set this aside, and I'm just going to use a right edge because this has everything that I need to talk about. The first thing you want to do is feel that knife in your hand. Is it heavy for its size? Fairly heavy? Okay, that's going to tell you something. If the knife is too light, I generally stay away from it. Taking into account its thickness, the number of blades, that kind of deal. Also, when you look at this blade, and you look at these blades, I don't know if you can see a difference, but these are probably a 1/16 of an inch thinner than this blade. So you want to open the knife, and in this case, this has a half stop on the blades. Okay, a lot of knives do, a lot of knives don't. It's not a deal breaker if it doesn't, but there's a positive half stop, and then there's a positive lock. Now these are not liner locks, they're not lock backs, so they will close if you put pressure on the knife that way, but you see That's a positive action, positive half stop, positive close, okay? That's called walk and talk. All of the blades in this knife do that, okay? That's something you want to look for. You want to look at, when you open the blade, you want to take that blade, you want to grab it like this, and you want to wiggle. There's no flipping movement to that blade whatsoever. That's what you're looking for. If it moves a little bit, it's not a deal breaker, but like some of the tactical type knives that are out now, they have a little adjustment screw here, and people, they're screwed together. I don't know that you're supposed to adjust it with that screw, but people will back that screw off so that the knife opens faster. But when you do that, you don't have as positive a lock, and the blade moves. And some of them, the blade moves anyway. But you want to check all the blades, however many of them that the knife has. This is my favorite pattern. This is called a Stockman pattern. It has 3 distinct blades. Now there's just a little bit of movement in that blade, but not very much, and this is an older knife. I've had this knife longer. I've used it a lot. So, but that's one of the things you want to check is it got good lockup? Does the blade move very much? And then you want to look at, like I said, you want to look at the back strap. What you're looking for is you don't want like a 2-piece back strap, but you want to look at this knife and look for any gaps. Now there's a tiny, tiny gap here. I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's not very much. That's probably a flaw on the very corner of the edge of that. But if you got excessive gapping, things like that going on, steer clear of the knife. You want to look at how well the knife is fitted to the bolsters. A small amount of gapping. There's just the tiniest of gaps. You can see like a kind of a dark line there, and maybe a little bit there. You'll see that on even expensive pocket knives sometimes. That's not a big deal. But there, sometimes you'll see like a big gap down here, or if you look at the knife this way, you'll see big gaps here, because that's not a 90-degree angle. It goes in just a little bit. You'll see big gaps here, or big gaps here, or gaps up and along this liner. That kind of deal. If you look here, there's a gap right there, but it's minuscule. That's fit and finish, and it's important to a knife. The knife should look good as well as function well. But that's kind of the things that you want to look for in a knife. You might also look at maybe the kind of grind it's got. If you're knowledgeable, this is a flat ground. But also, like, look at the knife like this and see how well these plunge lines match up with each other. These match up almost perfectly. I couldn't pick a flaw out of that if I tried. That kind of deal. If you're careful, and you pay attention to the workmanship of the knife, like what I just showed you. Look for flaws in that, particularly really major flaws like a 2-piece back strap. That's a no. Okay? There are knives out there in the $15 to 25 range that will work really well for a long. This knife I think probably cost about 12 bucks back 20 years ago. I don't remember. It might have been a lot less than that. But I thought it was a good buy, and it turned out to be a good buy. Like I said, all it says is stainless on the steel. So I don't know what the quality of the steel is, what kind of steel. I expect it's probably 440A or 420, something like that. But it takes a really nice fine edge and holds it fairly well for what it is. And so, you know, I got my money out of this knife a long flipping time ago. If you're careful, if you're choosy, picky, with the understanding that the knife costs like $12 or $15 or $20, okay? So there's going to be a few tiny flaws in it just simply because of its price, all right? You can find a good knife that will serve you well for a long time. 20 years is a long time for a cheap knife like this, and I have no expectation that this knife will fail anytime soon. It'll probably be around when I'm dead. And no, it's not a high dollar knife, but it's made well enough that I know from experience that it's going to last. And so what I'm going to try to do when I can is look at some inexpensive knives. I'll probably purchase some of them and show them to you, and then maybe carry them for 2 or 3 months and then come back with a follow-up on how well the knife worked for me and all of that, with the caveats that the knives are not going to see heavy use. They're just going to be an edge that I carry in my pocket to use on the occasions that I need them. It's basically light or medium duty stuff. So, but anyway, I would encourage you to look at inexpensive knives as a beginner, because you don't want, when you're learning to sharpen, you're going to jack up a few edges. You just are. If the knife doesn't cost very much, that doesn't matter because you can replace it. Also, the less expensive knives have a softer steel in them. Now, most of the time that would be something you don't want. But a softer steel sharpens easier. And a sharper steel doesn't hold, or I'm sorry, a softer steel doesn't hold an edge as long, so you need to sharpen it more often. And as a beginner knife sharpener, you need that thing called practice. So, and just out of general principle, I would encourage you to buy cheap knives to start with so you don't jack up a really nice knife. Wait until you get your basic sharpening skills ingrained, and then if you want to, buy you a really nice knife as a reward. Anyway, those are some of the things you want to look for in a knife, any kind of knife, expensive or cheap. Alright, bless you, and happy sharpening.